Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are so excited to have you here today for our 4-H STEM Challenge Galactic Quest webinar. It's a fantastic opportunity for you to learn more about this year's STEM Challenge. But before we get started, I really would love to take a moment to learn a little bit about you. I'm going to check in here. Looks like we have, wow. We have over 141, we're almost at 150 participants right now. That's so great to see you all joining. So we're gonna do a couple things before we kick it off with our formal presenters. One, I just wanna make sure everyone is really comfortable using the Zoom webinar platform and how you interact with us today. So if you have questions throughout the session, we really encourage that you submit them in either the question and answer pod or the chat. I'll be monitoring both of those, making sure that we field them to the proper presenter throughout the session. And then after that, we will definitely make sure this is recorded. So please feel free to send the recording to any colleagues or friends or parents or 4-H volunteers that you might know that would be interested in watching the recording for this session. We will also send out the deck and links to any additional resources that that we mentioned throughout the session. So we're going to get started right now, and I'm going to launch a poll here and get to know you so that we can have a sense. We have 183 people here today. So we're going to launch a poll right now and learn a little bit more about you. All right. So here is the poll. We would love you to tell us where you're joining from, which region in the United States you're joining from. So feel free to select either the Northeast, the South, North Central, or West. And then what best describes your role with 4-H? Are you a 4-H professional at the national level? Are you a 4-H professional at the state level? Are you a 4-H professional at the county level? A volunteer, a parent, maybe you're a school teacher, or maybe you're not involved with 4-H, and that's fine. Just let us know. And we're excited to introduce you to a little bit more about what 4-H does. And then finally, if you've participated in STEM Challenge before, and in the past couple of years, it's been known as STEM Challenge, but before that, we were known as 4-H National Youth Science Day. So perhaps you interacted with us that way. So I'm going to give everyone a couple of seconds just to fill out these polls, and then we're going to review them together so you can sort of see more about who's joining. So we'll give you guys a couple more seconds just to fill this out. All right, looks like we have about 80% of our almost 200 participants have submitted their answers here. Give it a couple more seconds. All right, I think we've reached quorum here. Oh, people are still going, they're still submitting. Thanks, everybody. All right, we're going to end polling for now so we can get started with the rest of our program. So it looks like we've got a really great representation from all of our, I'm going to share these results so you can see everything. So we have great representation from all of our regions, but looks like the South is winning slightly, which maybe isn't surprising considering we have Clemson representing today. And then it looks like we have the majority of you are joining from the county level as 4-H professionals. Welcome. We're really excited to have you here today. It looks like we've also got some participation at the national level and the state level, as well as some school teachers and 7 folks who are not affiliated with 4-H. And then it looks like the majority here have done STEM Challenge or NYSD in the past, but a good percentage, 40% have not. So that's great. It's a good thing for our presenters to know as they're going through if you are new. All right, so that's great. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move on with the rest of our program. Janet, can I pass it over to you to get us started?
Yeah, that would be great. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to the 2021 4-H Galactic Quest webinar. We're so glad to see so many folks in attendance as we launch this year's STEM Challenge. My name is Janet Golden, and I'm the 4-H Program Director at National 4-H Council for our STEM and workforce initiatives. And we're going to move to this first slide here and talk a little bit about Galactic Quest. And this is the second year that we're doing a space theme. I'm assuming a lot of you since you've participated with the 4-H STEM Challenge or NYSD in the past, probably did last year's Mars Base Camp. We actually had a record year with selling just about 20,000 kits and still selling. We also introduced our family kit for the first time. That did tremendously well. But best of all, we engaged, or I should say you engaged, almost 400,000 young people through the STEM Challenge. It's really exciting because obviously we're doing this STEM Challenge to get kids excited about STEM and bringing them new and different types of areas in STEM to think about and learn about together with their adult or teen leader. So this year's challenge, we're focusing on the mysteries and adventures of space exploration. So we're not just in Mars this year, we're expanding. We're thinking about the humans in space, the technology and resources that allow these off-planet missions, and then some of the obstacles that the explorers are going to encounter in space. So let's move on to the next slide. So, you know, this is Generation Z, right? Today's young people. And so they are going to be our future of space exploration. And as we know, as educators, how important space exploration is, we need to also help our young people understand the importance of it, the ins and outs of it, and get them excited about it. And also think about the potential careers that they can play a part of in space exploration. So the Galactic Quest kit's going to empower these young people to explore many areas in this thematic package. So while we call it the 4-H STEM Challenge, we've really broadened the challenge over the last few years to think about kids who maybe might not automatically be attracted to the word STEM, but, you know, there's nutrition aspects, there's agriculture aspects, there's citizenship, there's leadership, all these kind of things we try to incorporate in these kits to excite our young people and then the adults that they work with. So let's move on to, the STEM Challenge partner page. So we could not do this STEM Challenge at Council without all our incredible partners. First of all, I want to mention Clemson. Clemson was the winner of last year's RFA to develop this year's challenge. And for the majority of this webinar, you will be hearing from them, the experts that put this all together. We also have our USDA, our partners who are always very supportive moving forward, as well as our land-grant universities. We have our signature partner, and in just a little bit, you're going to be hearing from someone from the United States Space Force, who we thank for all of their support as we move forward this year. And we also have national partners of Bayer and Facebook as well. So pretty soon you're going to be hearing from Dr. Ashley Burns from Clemson. She led this team. She is the acting state program leader as well as the 4-H STEM specialist at Clemson. But before we turn it over to her team, I'm actually going to turn it over to one of my colleagues at Council, Jillian Baker, who's going to introduce a very special guest of ours today, who's going to share some information with you. So Jillian?
Thank you so much, Janet. And yes, I'm Jillian Baker. I'm an account manager here at National 4-H Council. And I am so excited to introduce our guest for today. Captain Victoria Garcia with the United States Space Force is joining us today to share a little bit more about their mission and kind of why they they are partnering with 4-H. So you can see a little bit about her bio here. She serves as the Director of Mission Support for Space Control Squadron, Space Delta 3 at Peterson Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado. She started with the United States Space Force a year ago. So I do want to just call that out and say happy 1-year anniversary with the Space Force. So I will turn it over to Captain Victoria Garcia now.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Captain Victoria Garcia. Oh, there you are. Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. Like I said, I'm Captain Victoria Garcia. Jillian, thank you for the introduction. And I just wanted to first introduce myself, give you a little bit of a history lesson of how I came to be and join the United States Space Force. So I've been in the military for approximately 18 years now. I joined in October of 2013. I joined the Air Force at the time as an enlisted member. And then in April of 2015, I was fortunate enough to commission in the Air Force as a space operations officer. So well-versed in the space career field. And last year, September 1st, 2020, I transitioned to the United States Space Force, which was the first day available to all active duty space, organic space career fields like myself at 13 Sierra. That was the first day we were actually able to transition. And so that was the day I joined the Space Force, left the Air Force. But I started my space journey back in 2015 out of what is now known as Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. There, I was fortunate enough to work with several mission partners, several space entities such as NASA and SpaceX. So I helped them launch several spacecraft out of California. I also was able to conduct several operational test missions out of California. And that led me to my current assignment where I'm stationed at Peterson Space Force Base as a mission crew commander. And I'm able to continue to grow in my career field in my mission area, which is space electronic warfare. They're assigned to Colorado. So I'm so excited to be here today. I think the world of this program, I think it's awesome how we're developing our young youth, getting them that hands-on experience, developing those critical thinking skills that can one day potentially be used in the United States Space Force. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you. And while we get some questions coming in, I do have some to get us started. So some of you might not know this, but we're really excited because in this year's Facilitator and Youth Guide, we have a career connection specifically with Space Force. So I'm really excited to kind of learn more about the career opportunities there are at Space Force. So to get us started, what are some of the specialization areas or skills or majors that are most valued at Space Force?
Awesome. That's a great question. So as you all, some of you may not know, but the Space Force is very small. We're about 5,000 or so Guardians. Before I get into that, hey, shout out to Vandenberg Space Force Youth Center. I just saw you guys pop in. That's awesome. But going back to that specialization, currently our enlisted Guardians, if you want to categorize them into a I can't even say that, specialization, I would say it's space operations, cyber, and intelligence. Now, within those areas, you have different career options for officers and enlisted, and that ranges anywhere from client systems to actual space system operations, target analysts, and then for the officers like myself, as space operations, engineering. There's just a spectrum of different career options for enlisted and officers that we target. And like I said before, it's programs such as these that are able to align our young youth into those careers if they so choose to. So we're excited about that.
Awesome. And, you know, you've talked about the specializations. We've seen your background. There's a lot of training that's needed. So what kind of career training have you been through? What kind of education do you receive with Space Force?
Yes. So every Space Force Guardian enlisted is required to graduate the Air Force's basic military training. And then our Space Force Guardian officers, we receive them from any one of our 3 commissioning sources, which is Officer Training School, ROTC, or the Air Force Academy currently. So they start off with that foundational training. Across the Air Force and Space Force, we do have several technical training schools that range from 2 weeks to 2 years, given the specialty or the career option. And the great thing about the Air Force and the Space Force is that it's part of our culture to continue to pursue education. And each enlisted Guardian is automatically enrolled upon enlistment into the Community College of the Air Force, which is the largest community college in the world. And so that's pretty cool. Additionally, once they are in the military, they have so many different opportunities to continue and further their education at a very low cost or at a less financial burden so that they can pursue their 4-year degree.
Wonderful. And then I see we had a question come in from one of our audience members, and they're wanting to hear a little bit more about Space Force's mission. What is their mission at Space Force? And could you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, awesome. So the Space Force is the newest military branch. It's new and exciting. A lot of people want in. There's a lot of talented personnel that want to join from their military service over to the United States Space Force. So it's very competitive. I count it a blessing just to be in the service now, but our mission is to train or organize, train, and equip the Space Forces in order to protect the United States and our allied interests in space. So that is our direct mission for the United States Space Force, and it's exciting.
Awesome. And then I think I have time for one more question. So I'm going to ask one question and then I'm going to leave it open for anybody else. I haven't seen any come through, but we really just want to know, as we're talking to some of our youth and why they should be excited about Space Force, could you tell us, why do you love your job? What excites you about being a part of Space Force?
Well, I'm going to give you the typical answer, and it's you are part of something greater than yourself. You are serving the United States, you are defending the space domain, and you are partnering with all kinds of mission partners in the civilian sector. And so service, passion, those are all the reasons why I love my job. And I'm so excited to be part of the newest military branch.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And there was one question, I think they might have joined a little bit late, but it asked, did you join Air Force first? And I believe that is correct. Yes, you did join Air Force prior to being in Space Force.
I did. I actually joined 18 years ago in October of 2003. And my journey's been very, very different. I joined as a E1 in Airman Basic. And I went to San Antonio, started my journey there. And I transitioned from enlisted member to an officer 12 years after I had joined. And since 2015, I've been fortunate enough to be a space operations officer. And like I said before, joining the Space Force or transitioning to the Space Force last September.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I don't see any other questions, but I've really enjoyed our conversation. And I think everybody else has too. We've gotten some really cool responses in our chat over here. So thank you again. And thank you for your service. We really appreciate you as our partner.
Awesome. Thank you.
And now I believe I'm going to turn it over to Ashley and the Clemson team.
Yay, Jillian, thank you so much. Yes, we have had an absolute blast and we are very excited to bring you Galactic Quest this year. We have enjoyed working with National 4-H on this challenge, and like in years past, the facilitator and youth guides are really going to be your go-to resource for information on this challenge. So we're going to walk through a few of the activities and really hit the highlights for you, but you are welcome to ask questions as we go along. Stick them in the chat and we'll try to answer them then, or we can have time for maybe a brief Q&A at the end as well. So we've had in these guides, we have packed them full of handy tips and information that will really help you facilitating this challenge and make it simple and straightforward. But I do especially want to point out the suggested script icon that you will find in the facilitator guide for each activity. Those scripts will really help orient the learner in the material and will also help you make those real important real world connections with the problems and issues that are raised there. When it comes to delivering this challenge, you can really go in depth and do the full challenges with the add-ins and do those over a longer period of time. Or you can just keep it short and sweet and pull out little pieces of the activities, or you can really do anything in between. This kit was designed so that you can do the activities really in any order that you choose. You can do them independently, or you can do them in any combination. Really, the choice is up to you and whatever restrictions for time that you may have in place. So with that, we are going to kick it off, and I am going to hand it over to one of my colleagues. Megan Barkley is one of our 4-H agents and served on this design team, as well as Terry Sumter.
All right, thank you all so much for joining us today. So I'm going to introduce stellar optics. So in this activity, youth expand their universe by creating a simple refracting telescope, investigating the refraction of light, and discovering the fascinating world of constellations. So this is really a great activity for youth to develop their scientific inquiry skills. So in your kit, you're going to find all the components needed to assemble a telescope, as well as the constellation cards. So in the guides, there's some schematics for how you can assemble the telescope, but if you want to make this a little bit more challenging for older youth, we suggest letting them problem solve and try and figure out how to assemble this on their own. And again, this is something that they could do in teams. So to open the activity, you kind of want to hone in on the light refraction. So what we suggest for that is to go ahead and open it up with the optical illusion experiment that's in your guide. So you can just grab a clear glass of water and fill it up with about halfway of water and stick the pencil in the water. So then you can let youth observe what's happening, make their predictions, and they'll be able to see that, the pencil doesn't change its shape, but it's going to appear like it's broken, enlarged, or curved in the water. And so this is a simple and easy way to show them the light waves traveling through the cup, becoming bent and distorted due to the refraction. So that's a great introduction. That will lead you into the lens experiment. So the fun part about this kit is it comes with interchangeable lenses. So what you can do with them is you can have the youth make predictions and learn the difference between concave lenses and convex. So the concave lenses, simply they cave in and are thinner in the middle than at the ends, while convex lenses are thicker in the middle than at the ends, and they converge light. So what you can do with your youth is have them take their lenses, maybe set them on the table. They'll see with the plano convex lens that it's going to be shaped a little bit differently on one side than the other. And then another way for them to see the light refraction is to have them look at the text in their guide through the lens. So they can change different focal points and they'll be able to see the refraction and reflections from the lenses. So it's a really neat way for them to see that hands-on. So to tell you more about the constellations and the telescope itself, I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Terry Sumter.
Thank you, Megan. As Megan stated, the telescope is an amazing device that has the ability to make objects appear closer than what they really are. So in this activity, we suggest that you let the kids expand their universe and just play with the telescope and the parts before you actually have them put it together. When they take this telescope, they can look at the lenses, the different parts, they can move them up and down. They can actually draw out a telescope before you give them the kit. Because once you give it to them, they're going to actually just start playing with it and not really pay you too much of attention. So just have them do that before you actually give them the actual telescope to put together. Another thing we suggest is that you go over the history. You can talk about Edwin Hubble, how he used the largest telescope of his day in the 1920s to look into space and explore what was out there. Today, we have the NASA James Webb telescope that is coming out to be launched in November, December, around that time. It originally said October, but now it's going to be November, December. So look forward to that. And that's something that you can explain and talk to with the children about. The James Webb Space Telescope is larger and better than the Hubble. So that would be very exciting to go over with them to see what would happen with that when it launches. Also, we have the 10 teleoptics cards. You can't really see them, but they're in your kit that you can use with the kids and let them use those and use the telescope to look at the patterns and have them record the patterns and talk about the different stars and the makeup of the patterns and what they see. And that really is what we talked about doing with the kit, is just have them explore the telescope before you actually put it together. And when they put it together, then they can look and they'll see that when they're looking through the telescope, the objects will appear upside down and you can explain to them why that is. Okay, thank you.
I also just want to note here that Janet has dropped the actual link to the facilitator guide into the chat here. So if anyone wants to download that and follow along, they're welcome to do that. So thanks, Janet, for adding that. All right, I'm going to check and see if we have any questions. One of the questions here is whether the slides are going to be in the kit. And so these slides aren't going to be sent out in the kit. However, they will be sent out in an email following this presentation tomorrow that you'll get in your inbox. So you will have access to this as a resource. All right, I think we're going to get started with the next section.
All right, the next activity is Cyberspace. We all know that secrecy is a critical part of our lives in both ways, big and small. And as our lives are increasingly become conducted on the internet, we want to be sure that we can maintain the privacy of our information and control of who has access to this privileged information. Digital commerce, business, government operation, and even social networks all rely on the ability to keep information from falling into the wrong hands. In this computer science activity, youth will explore the terms encryption, decipher, and cybersecurity as they consider how data is shared and why it needs to be secure. Participants will use a Cypher Wheel to decode a secret message, encrypt and decipher words with their peers, and participate in a group relay. This activity encourages the use of computational thinking skills, and especially the pattern recognition, as youth search to find patterns to find the solutions to the encryption challenges. If we could move to the next slide. All right, now, originally named for Julius Caesar, who is said to have used encryption to send messages to his soldiers and generals, Caesar's Cypher Wheel does the work of shifting the letters of the alphabet to create and decode messages. Because our information is not traveling through traditional messengers, we need a more secure way of encrypting our data to prevent it from being hacked into on the internet. But this activity works well for children to understand the basic concept. Now, in your kit, you're going to have pre-made Cypher wheels or that you'll cut and assemble. You'll have the activity reusable answer sheets, and they'll look similar to these. And all of the information will be in your code, in your guidebook. What you will need are some dry erase markers for this activity. But with a little practice, youth will be able to encrypt their own messages for others to decipher. Now, in a Caesar cipher, every letter in the alphabet is shifted a certain number of spaces over. The number of spaces the letters are shifted is called the key. If you know the cipher key, then you can break the code to read the message. The three parts of the cipher include the message key, the message, the key, and the encrypted message. And all three are present on the Cypher Wheel shown in the graphic on your screen. The actual message letters are in the outer ring, and the encrypted message letters are on the inner wheel next to the number key. You'll notice that the actual message letters are all lowercase, and the encrypted message letters are all uppercase letters. Now let's look at the example that's on your screen. To use the Cypher Wheel, we're going to start by placing the A's, lining up the A's in the 0. And you'll notice that there's a small black arrow on the top of the A on the outer wheel. And if you line that up and put the 0 and the A on the inner wheel together, that's not the cipher, that's the actual real message. In order to make the cipher work, you're going to turn the wheel so that the inner wheel, the 0, is aligned. When we move it over 4, it's lined up, the A is now lined up on the outside with the E on the inside. And that lets us know that when we shift these letters 4 spaces, the actual message begins with an E. If your Cypher Wheel shifted over 6, then your A would actually become a G. All right, next slide, please. In the activity, there are 3 practice ciphers for kids to learn the process, then an additional 3 for them to create an encrypted code for someone else to decipher. The activity, Save the Satellite, increases the complexity of the code through the concept of multi-bit encryption so that every letter in a word or phrase has a different key to solve. The activity reinforces the skills learned in the practice code, but now that we've added a more physical component so that we can get the kids up and moving. So in the Save the Satellite activity, it can be done individually or it can be done in a group. And one of the ways it's presented in the guide is to have the teams race to solve the cipher so that they can save the satellite from colliding with other satellites in space jump. And the shorter amount of time it takes for them to solve the puzzle increases their protector status. Youth can compete in teams or they can compete against themselves just to improve their score and see who solves it first. The one thing we wanted to note that it's essential in this activity for youth to get the fundamental skill of using the Cypher Wheel down before they try to move on to the relay race. If they get to the end of the relay race and they're confused or they don't understand how to read the code, they can put a mark in there and the next person in the race can go up and try to debug it and solve it. But there are further instructions and the answer key in the facilitator's guide to help you get through the practice rounds and make sure everyone understands it. Now, there's also a separate script in this activity to help set the stage for the relay activity.
Okay, now to our third activity in the kit. This is Astro Adventure. So as humans start to attempt to explore and ultimately colonize other locations throughout our solar system and the galaxy, infrastructure will be needed to establish and support this expansion of territory and make space exploration sustainable. So in Astro Adventure, this is a board game where youth will work together to gather resources that they will need to live and work in deep space. In this Catan style board game, you can have up to 6 players at any one time. And if you actually have more than that, you can assign additional roles. You can rotate turns with the game. You can have the youth play in teams. So you can actually stretch it a little bit further than just 6. You could have a record keeper. You could have a resource bank, somebody in charge of those various roles. But in this game, there is a game board on the screen and resource tokens that you can see. There's also pawns that are not shown. There are different colors, 6 different colors, and there's 4 of each of these pawns. So players will choose their starting location anywhere on the left-hand side of the board game. Then they will roll the dice to put their players on the board, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a resource key. And the objective of this game is not to get to the other side. So that'll be like the first inclination. They're like, okay, we start here, we end here. No, no, no. The objective of the game is to actually collect resources. So each resource will help give the player what they need to continue in the game. So they will add pawns eventually to the game. You will get 1 of each different type of resource token can be traded in for an additional pawn. And once a player gets all 4 of their pawns onto the playing surface, they win. Alternatively, you can play for points, and there's a chart in both the youth and the facilitator guide that'll let you know what each item is worth and how you can total points. But when it comes to situation cards, that is another way that we can play the game, or as another layer in the game. So this is a really Catan style game. If you'll go to the next slide, we'll talk about the situation cards. They are 52 decks. I love, love, love these cards because on the outside of the case, it says, we have a situation. It's written on the card box. These situation cards are drawn during the game anytime a player rolls the number 7 on the 2 dice. Based on probabilities associated with gameplay when you use 2 6-sided dice. 7 is the most likely number to be rolled. The probability is the highest. So therefore, 7 is the situation card. The player will draw the card, read it for the group, and then follow the actions that it states. These cards are jam-packed with cool facts about space, other worlds, even the human health implications of space travel. And actually a faculty member at Clemson University, a real astrophysicist, was the creative genius behind this game concept and also helped contribute to the facts and information in the cards. So it's really, really good content in here, and I encourage y'all to explore those. But the cards give players additional resources occasionally by the actions that are written on them. Sometimes they have the participants, the youth, get up and physically move around. Sometimes the cards will allow them to move their pawns anywhere else on the board. So there are lots of cool features that are built into these situation cards. If you'll go into the next, we'll go into the gameplay piece just a little bit more. So here's where I'm going to back up and just make sure everybody understands how to get their players on the board and how they move on the board. All this is written up in the facilitator guide to really help explain it. And usually when looking at a game board and looking at player pawns, the first inclination that kids are going to have is to see these hexagons on the game, and they're going to try to put their pawn right in the center of the shape. But that's not how the game is played. Instead, just like in Catan, the players will move their pawns along the black lines between the hexagons. So every intersection where the points are, that serves as the place in which the pawn will rest. So that will be where the pawn will move. So pawns cannot jump over or pass through another pawn. They must go around. They can choose whatever direction that they want to move. Pawn cannot end its turn immediately adjacent to another pawn. So that's kind of a trick. You can see on this figure on the slide that where the red X is, the player can move from one intersection to another, but it can't end its turn right there next to another pawn. So the pink pawn could not end up right next to the blue pawn. So each world on this game board is rich in a resource, and that resource is color coded. So you'll notice on this slide, there is a key on the right-hand side of the board that you can't see, but in this image, there is several worlds shown, and each is color coded to be rich in a different resource: propellant, rare minerals, carbon, water. If a player is at an intersection that is next to one of these worlds, when a dice is rolled, you'll notice that there is a number associated with each of these worlds. The number could be different. It's not correlated to the resource itself, other than the fact that if a dice is rolled, and in this case on your screen, let's say a 5 is rolled, every player on the board, not just the person that rolled, but every player on the board that has a pawn next to a world with a number 5, they get to collect that resource. So in this image, you can see the blue pawn is located next to a rare mineral, that gray world that has a number 5 on it. Also the pink pawn, so the blue pawn would get to collect a rare mineral resource. The pink pawn, there's actually 2 that are touching the carbon or the green world with the number 5. So they would actually get to collect 2 carbon resource tokens, which is kind of cool. So that is how a player collects resources. And as the resources get collected, kids can trade with each other. You can turn in 4 of the same resource to get a different resource from the Earth Bank. They could trade with each other and they can set the terms of that agreement. And then finally, they can trade 1 of each type of the resource. So they're going to have 4 different types. They can trade that into Earth to get more pawns on the board. And again, whoever gets the most pawns on the board first wins the game. So I think.
Hey, Ashley, do you think we could take a little, we have some great questions that are coming in. I just would love to take a moment. They're not for any specific activity, but just more about the kit in general. So I'd love to take a moment to ask these while we have the chance. So one great question is, how many youth can use one kit at a time, and can the kit be used over and over again?
Yes, great question. So the family kit and the educator kit are a little bit different in terms of their numbers. So the educator kit, I believe you can use anywhere between 3 and 4 kids per kit can use it for the family kit. For the educator kit, 12 is what we are targeting with that one, because there are 6 players that can play this game at any one time, assuming that it would be used in rotation. The kit materials are able to be used over and over again. That was the second part of the question. And they are designed. The telescope pieces can come apart. You can't take the stickers back off, but you can take the components back apart. The game can be used over and over again. Pretty much every component can be reused.
That's awesome. Thank you. And what ages do you recommend for these challenges?
In general, this kit is targeted for kind of that 8 to 14 year range, but really you can tailor it up or down. My 6-year-old has played this game with me and she's beaten me just about every time. And then the older kids really enjoy some of the detailed gameplay and probability strategy that's associated with some of these kit materials as well.
Awesome. Now we have a question here specifically about the Astro Adventure that you just walked through, and it's whether it can be compressed, the activity itself, so the participants could do it in if they had kind of a time crunch, they didn't have time for a full game.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talked about the point system, there is a table that says what pieces, what resources, situation cards. It gives you a point system to tally those. And so if you run out of time, you can just stop the game when you run out of time and look to see who has the most points based on what resources they had in hand at the time to determine a winner.
Awesome. That's perfect. You guys are sending some great questions in, so thank you. It's great to see all this engagement. One question we have here from Laura is whether you guys have any instructions or suggestions for running this challenge virtually, which can be a challenge sometimes.
It definitely can. And that was one component that we had considered discussing, and we just didn't have time to loop it into this particular webinar today. But there are strategies that you can use. The gameplay, for one, if you've got components at each location you could do, it would be easy to play that game in multiple locations if you had a game at each place. But I think there are different strategies that we can share for each of these activities, maybe at a later date or in a follow-up.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, that deserves a webinar in itself, I think.
It does.
Just how you do things like this virtually. Perfect. Now, I also have another question, and Ashley, you might not be the person to answer this. Maybe there's someone here from National 4-H Council who can answer this. But it's a good question. Like last year for March Challenge, they were able to buy extra rovers on Shop 4-H, and was just wondering if there would be an opportunity to purchase extra items such as the telescope. And it looks like that question came up a couple of times. We might need to check on that for you. Is there anyone from the 4-H Council team who could speak to that if you guys have any information about that?
Yeah, this is Janet. I actually just emailed our supply person that question. Her response right now is possibly she needs to look and see how quickly we can get more to do that. We did have some difficulties with products coming in, taking quite some time and all this year. And so she's going to look into it, and hopefully we can get back to you with an answer, in the next few days.
Awesome. Thank you. And we will, we can also just send out an update for people that have registered. We had a great registration list, so we can always email out an update to you once we have more information about that. There was a good question here from Tony. Let me see if I can pull it up. I believe it was in the chat. Okay. Are most of these activities designed to be taught in a classroom? I'm a club manager and I'm trying to understand how I would incorporate this into a club as we only meet once a month. Anyone have any thoughts on how to adapt it for that kind of an environment?
Oh, absolutely. I think in terms of a timeline, you can pick and choose kind of maybe where you want to start and how you want to map it out. But meeting once a month would be perfect for this. I would not try to squeeze all of this into one setting by any means. So if you meet once a month, maybe kick it off in October and start one challenge, and you can do future activities throughout the course. it is designed that you could do it at home, in a classroom, outside, indoors, really any way that you want to. There are ways that you can go about it. So with a limited amount of time in a club, maybe you could look at the short and sweet version, or even have them challenged to do some of the extension activities, which I'll talk about at the end, and a follow-up or in between club meetings to keep the learning going.
Awesome. We had a couple more questions that came through, but I think what we should do is probably finish up our section here going through each activity, and then we'll circle back and answer the rest of those questions, and some of them are more logistical. So we're going to get started with our next section. All right, do we have our presenters for the Cosmic Claw?
Yes.
Activity?
So hello, I'm Patricia Whitener. I'm a county agent with Greenville County, South Carolina 4-H. And so hopefully maybe I can answer some of those questions too about usage in a club setting, because that's how I plan to be using a lot of these amazing activities. The Cosmic Claw might be familiar to some of you all. It is based on a classic 4-H activity, but we've adapted it to be cosmic. The next generation of space explorers is going to be asked and tasked with discovering ways to increase food, water, oxygen supplies while traveling in deep space, or even living for extended periods of time on international space stations, or even on planets. So agriculture and the mechanical arms, robotic arms that help humans with tasks in an inhospitable world in these dangerous settings that maybe human beings cannot physically go to. These robots are key components to a future of sustainable space exploration. So with this activity, you're going to be using that engineering design process to build and operate a model working robotic claw using hydraulics. So working together, the group will create a model of a hydraulic powered robotic arm, the claw, and they will test it by completing an agricultural task. So ultimately, the mechanical claw should be able to rake or scoop or grasp to gather, quote, crops from another world. And so to explain it, we've kind of broken it apart into a two-part build. To explain the first part, which is the actual assembling of the hydraulics, is my colleague, Rosemary Martin. So we're going to stop share and let her show her screen.
Okay, hi, I'm Rosemary. I am the Richland County 4-H agent, and I am from Columbia. And I'm going to show you the building of the claw itself. In addition to the equipment that you have in your supplies and equipment that you have in your kit, you're going to need a cup of water. And here I have dyed the water blue. It might be easier for the youth to determine whether their tubing is full of water if you color the water. It's not required, but it's just helpful. And a screwdriver. So you will have tubing, and you have 2 cylinders, which look a lot like a syringe. And you will use those to fill both you're going to fill both of them with water. Then you're going to attach the tubing to one and fill the tubing, and make sure that you attach the tubing to the part of the cylinder that has the actual hole in it. It looks like there's 2 different places where you can attach it, but only one has the hole in it. So you want to attach that, and then you will fill the tubing with water. And you want to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles in your tubing. So there are instructions in the youth guide and the facilitator guide on how to ensure that you don't have any water in your tubing. And then once you have it attached, then you're going to use the screws and secure the tubing. So this is what it will look like once you have it finished. And I see that I have an air bubble in my water here. So then once it's together, then you're just going to play with it and make sure that it's working properly, because this is what is going to actually operate your claw. So you see it works just like that. And we had a question, what happens if someone just is very forceful with their syringe with the plunger? And the screws will help keep it intact, but you can instruct your youth not to be too forceful with it, because we can't guarantee that it won't pop the tubing off and have water shooting everywhere. So that's just basically the design for the hydraulics. And again, that will operate your claw once you've designed and built your claw. Take it away, Patricia.
Okay, we can, there we go. Hi, everyone. All right, so thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the engagement. So like we said, this is a two-part build. So the hydraulics, which are going to actually operate the claw closing and opening mechanism, is one build. And your guides, which I hope you're downloading if you haven't received them already, have these amazing schematics in them. They're incredibly helpful. I'm a very visual person. So the schematics in the youth guide on page 15, and then they're also listed on page 32 of your facilitator guide. So very step-by-step, have the schematics right there. Now for older students, what we think, especially playing off that whole engineering design process, as was mentioned earlier, if you give them the materials that are coming in the kit, they're just going to start building. And that's how my nephew is. If I give him Legos or something, he's just building. He's not even bothering to look at the instructions or looking at the outcome. So we suggest, especially with older kids, if you're going to do this activity, one tip for engagement is to introduce the problem. Again, Ashley pointed out the suggested scripts. You're looking for those icons in your guide. And that's going to get them started thinking about the problem, have them work together as groups to talk out, draw out, design a possible solution before maybe giving them the solution that's in the guide. So that's one way to extend that activity and to really engage them in the engineering design process. With younger kids, they're probably going to want to go ahead and follow the step-by-step procedures that are going to be listed out. For this next part of the build, which is the actual assembling of the claw, there's also wonderful schematics that are very, very helpful in the youth guide. And essentially, you're going to take your hydraulics and attach them, and then having them redesign. So this is where it gets very makerspace. So once you have all of your parts, and by the way, cutting these is not very easy for me. I found that snapping them was actually the best way to do it. So you're going to count the number of spaces that you need in order to get 3 half strips and 2 quarter strips. So you have plenty of strips in your kits to be able to create the 3 half strips and the 2 quarter strips. So when you're doing these, don't try to cut them, really just having the kids know where they want to snap, and then they just break apart just like that. So very simple, very easy to do. Other things that you'll get in the kit, if you want to have extra zip ties, I just can't get enough of these guys. They're wonderful to have. Other makerspace type things that don't come in the kit that I found are really, really handy are things like little cups. Maybe you want to use that as an end for scooping, rubber bands, ends of spoons or plasticware. I always have duct tape, right? Because ideally they're going to build this and then hopefully redesign as well. That's part of that whole engineering process. Once you attach your hydraulics, then also having them come up with a way to mount that is another challenge in and of itself as an extension. But essentially, and I've got some of those holes, those air bubbles in there. So here is my claw that I built, and I put a raking end on mine. So essentially, you were going to use your hydraulics to open and close your raking action. So, and I have the air bubbles in there. So it does not work as effortlessly when you have the air bubbles, which is why we pointed that out. You don't want air bubbles. So having them design what they want on the ends in order to complete their challenge, that's where where they can get creative, and where you want to have extra zip ties or duct tape. It's 4-H, got to have duct tape, so that they can change out the ends of their claw and have it perform different activities. But again, the schematics are incredibly helpful. The suggested script is all there for you. We just love this activity. It's classic.
All right, we'll get this presentation back up here. Thank you so much, everyone.
And we are pretty much done with the activities. So the really cool thing that is built into these activities in the facilitator guide, at the very end, there are add-ons for each and every one of these. There are great video links, there are additional resources, background information, and some other ideas for engagement and taking these things a step further. So feel free to explore those and go in there. Also, in the youth guide only, at the end of each one of these activity sections, there are career connections. So please look into that and have youth look into where the career connections are. So for each of these, Stellar Optics really focuses on STEM and STEM careers. Cyberspace has to do with STEM and also civic engagement. That's where our Space Force connection is really, really strong. Astro Adventure has STEM, civic engagement, as well as healthy living. Cosmic Claw has STEM, and then this is where our agriculture component comes in really strongly, and the robotics that we see in so many different fields, as well as healthy living. So lots of great pillar connections there, and great additional add-ons that we encourage you to look for.
All right, I know
I'll hand it back over.
Thank you. I know we're really close to time, so we're going to do this quickly. But if you have additional questions about these resources, you're welcome to reach out to me or to Janet. We can definitely connect you. But I just wanted everyone to be aware that we do have marketing resources for the Galactic Quest STEM Challenge. It's on the STEM Challenge website, and we will definitely link to that in the email you'll receive as a follow-up to this webinar. There are graphics that are sized for Instagram, for Twitter, for Facebook. We have a frame that you can use on your Facebook profile. And then we also have Instagram story sized graphics, as well as a printable flyer. And all of it's in English and in Spanish. So if you are interested in that, you should definitely check it out. They're very easy downloads, and it just makes your life easier. If you want to communicate about this with your social audiences, you don't have to think about it. You can just plug in these great ready to go graphics and let people know about your event or opportunities to join you locally. So definitely take advantage of that. All right. And we're actually I'm going to kick it back over to Janet, who's going to talk a little bit about some other exciting opportunities we have coming up in the next couple of months.
Yeah, so just real quick before I mention it should say 2022. I don't know where I am. It should say 2022 STEM Challenge. I want to mention that if you've ordered a kit already, they will be shipped no later than the end of next week. So start expecting them in about a week and a half at most. If you haven't ordered your kits, there's still plenty more to order. Remember that the Educator Kit has a $5 discount and the Family Kit has a $3 discount. We will have that up until it runs out. This was a generous donation from our partnership with Space Force. So thank you to them. This should say, like I said, 2022 STEM Challenge. Our theme this year is Green Innovation. The RFA is out to our land-grant universities to apply. It's a $50,000 award. And much like Clemson did this year, you would be, if you were to win the bid, you would be the one to create the kit for 2022. So all the information will be sent out to you following this presentation in about 24 hours or so, with all of the links and the PowerPoints and all. So don't worry if you haven't written everything down. And I'm always available at jgolden@4hcouncil.edu to answer any questions about this year or, of course, the 2022 STEM Challenge as well. And then I also want to mention that there's only 2 more days to register for the 4-H STEM Summit. This is a phenomenal opportunity for 4-H teens, or any teens, I should say, grades 9 through 12. It's really an opportunity for them to connect with their peers. It is virtual. We do recommend you do it in a hybrid learning style, so you can gather a local group together if you'd like. It doesn't have to be done that way, but really a nice opportunity for them to learn about Galactic Quest and space at their level, and also become better leaders, so that you could use these teens then to go out and do the STEM challenge with younger kids. So lots more information on the link, but encourage you to do that. It's $100 per person. And with that, we are going to close and say thank you. We really appreciate our team from Clemson and Captain Garcia from Space Force and all our colleagues at Council. And we appreciate you all. And please reach out to us if you have any questions. We'll be glad to help you out.
And I want to say that there's great engagement, great questions. For some of you that we weren't able to answer your questions live, we will make sure we get back to you with answers to your specific questions, particularly around ordering extra components of the kits, because we want to make sure we give you the right answer to that. But thank you everyone for such a great session. Thanks everybody. And don't hesitate to reach out to any of us on this team if you need additional assistance. We're here to help. All right.